Hello, hello. I've arrived. Yes, thank you very much for your encouragement, all. All right. Oh, okay, hold on. I'm getting a phone call. Give me just a minute, actually. Alright, we're back. Anyway, so, getting over it. Let's see. Business for today. I guess business for this week. So, today, getting over it, like I just said. Tomorrow, you can expect more Tales of Arise. Thursday, should be another Valhalla collab with Chevy Sheps. Friday, I'm going to be working extra because my co-workers are going to be out of town at a conference. So, it will be just me covering the business the whole day. So I'm not necessarily expecting to stream on that day. We'll see, I suppose. Got this? Thank you. But yes. So, I'm not necessarily expecting to stream on Friday, like I said. I'm not necessarily opposed to it if I happen to feel like it. We'll see. But yes. And then I think if I have a little bit of extra time, I might do a stream on Saturday to make up for the lack of streams these past couple of Fridays, I think. I don't know, maybe not, it wasn't these last 2 Fridays like I was thinking, but I definitely, I missed one. I'm planning on missing one this week. I missed at least one last week. So, there is stream to be caught up on. But yes, so that is that. Then, so yes, as per usual, you can expect every stream except for the Thursday stream to begin at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, approximately, and the Thursday stream to start at approximately 8:30 p.m. Central Time. But yes, so if I recall correctly, last time I was here, I mentioned that I was going to be out of the house at a friend's house sitting for them, and cat sitting for them. So if you listen closely, you should notice that basically everything's approximately the same as it was. Because I'm not there right now. As it turns out, some combination of factors has caused me to suffer an extraordinarily severe allergic reaction at their home, such that I cannot stay there. At least not long term. I am going over, to ensure that the cats are well maintained and all that, fed and watered and all of that. But I cannot be there long term because I will suffocate and die. Unfortunately. But yes. But yeah, I definitely I struggled very much to breathe there, so I definitely would not have been able to stream there like I was originally planning on or doing for this week and these upcoming 2 weeks. But yes, fortunately, it's not too far away from my home, so I don't need to travel a great distance. I could walk there if I wanted to. But yeah. Anyway, so I haven't, stayed over there in the past couple of days, but it's definitely still impacts me a little bit. I feel like I'm still feeling the aftershocks, if you would. But yeah, my throat feels a little bit froggier than usual. Not too much so, though. But yes, anyway. Getting over it. Let me get to the game. There we are. So, let us resume. Now, the eagle-eyed and elephant-memoried among you may notice that we're in a slightly different position than we ended off last time. I decided that since we ended up making negative progress, ended up making negative progress over the course of the previous stream, I'd start off at the furthest point that we made it to. As it turns out, we're starting off exactly where we left off last time. So, such is the life, I suppose. Oops. You were saying? Yeah, I was saying, but talk is cheap, I suppose. Fortunately, I feel like I've come to a much better understanding of the obstacles around here. So ideally, it shouldn't be too terribly difficult. It shouldn't be too terribly difficult to return to where we were. Speedruns of this game look bonkers. I know. Most of the content that I've seen of this game has been speedruns. I've seen, I think, 3 speedruns of this game, 3 or 4. But yeah, I didn't watch them with the expectation that I would pull off any speedrun strats, so to speak. But yeah, so I didn't watch them to sort of memorize the route or anything. So I don't remember it. But yeah, I've seen quite a few. Yeah, I remember one notable instance of speedruns of this game are back, I believe, I want to say the 3rd or 4th generation of Niji Sanji English. One of the VTubers, Luca Kanashiro, his first stream, his debut stream, or I think, his first stream after his debut, I think. More specifically, his first non-debut stream was, he initially, was on the schedule as a getting over it endurance stream. Would be his first stream of a video game. And as it turns out, this individual happens to be a speedrunner of this game, and so he completed it in a remarkable time. And then he did it again just to prove that he could. And then he ended the stream. Yeah, so this is the greatest obstacle we've faced so far. The one that has stymied all of our attempts to make progress. But I think if I place myself a little bit more cautiously, we might just be able to make it through this relatively unscathed. But yes, I feel like I've learned well the lessons of previous attempts. Maybe I haven't learned them that well, but I know enough to arrest my fall sometimes. But yeah, during the previous stream, I definitely felt like I had almost like I had forgotten the game to a certain extent. I felt like I was doing much worse than I used to. But now I feel like clearly, I made it further than I ever have, however briefly. So I must have learned something. And I'm glad to have that feeling today. But yeah, so anyway, where are my manners? Altariana, how are you doing today? Good to see you around, as always. There we are. Yeah, so I guess beyond the getting over it that I've been discussing, I finally got around to uploading some of the VODs that I'm behind on. not too behind, just 2 streams behind, in large part due to the relative lack of streams recently. The relatively few I've had. But yeah, so getting caught caught up on that again. But yes, I tend to not. I never really intended to necessarily, but I tend to not do too much stream work on weekends. I never really, again, I never consciously decided not to. But that just sort of seems to be how it goes. Yeah, I usually save the weekends for use them as time to pursue various other projects. As I typically don't have a tremendous amount of time to work on a whole lot of things during the week. It could be worse though, but yeah, it's all a matter of time management. I believe I've spoken about it before, but my time management skills are pretty poor. I could definitely do a lot. I could definitely fit a lot more into any given day. But, oh well. But yeah, so beyond that, then, one thing I've been doing recently is I've been watching the new Gundam series. I think I might have mentioned it before. Yeah, I won't go into any tremendous detail because I want to avoid any spoilers. But I'm quite enjoying it. I don't know. I think I might have mentioned this. I feel like I've talked about it before. I think I specifically talked about not wanting to talk about it too much on account of the spoilers and all that. But it's a good series. I've not watched a lot of Gundam. I've watched the first episode of G Gundam. I've watched the first episode of Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. And I've watched the entirety of Build Fighters Try. Yes, the entirety of Build Fighters Try, largely because I had a friend of mine, I had a couple of friends of mine who we had regular... Yeah, we watched it together regularly. We had watch parties, if you would. And so that's how I managed to get through Try. I say get through Try as though I didn't enjoy it immensely, but that's just how it goes sometimes, I suppose. Yeah, I haven't watched the original Build Fighters, incidentally. Not so much as a single episode. But yeah, I think honestly, I'm enjoying the Gundam series enough that I think maybe I might do a stream one of these days where I just sort of talk about it, do a sort of recap of it, and sort of give my thoughts and all of that. I don't think I'd do a watch along per se, but I might do that. No. I don't know. Actually, you know what? I don't think I'd do a watch along because I don't want to try being funny while I'm watching the show. I'd prefer to just spend my energy while I'm watching the show, and be funny afterwards, perhaps. No. I suppose I don't necessarily need to do a whole lot of talking during the actual watching of the show. I can share my thoughts afterwards. But I would prefer to, if I'm streaming, I would like to be talking in as much as is reasonable and feasible. So having an extended period of not talking about things much is not to my taste. Not to my taste. Not how I like to run the stream. Not necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's just not how I prefer to do things. Oops. Alright. Let's see. I've also been playing Terraria a lot. Yeah, for the first time I've gotten into hard mode on my own. Then I decided to start another file and do it again. Basically. Because I sort of wanted to I don't know, I felt like I wanted to sort of go through the pre-hard mode content a little bit more thoroughly than I did on my first save file. And, you know, obviously I could have gone through that content post-hard mode, but it would have been much harder on account of the hardness of hard mode. So, let's position ourselves cautiously again. I've gone into it before, but I feel like I sort of go through cycles of sort of playing a little bit too slow and playing a little bit too fast. So let's try to play this at a moderate, reasonable speed. Well, this is... okay, there we go. Yeah, sometimes, usually I try to stop a fall by holding out the hammer at some, you know, generally off to the side to try and catch on to things. I don't think that's really worked here, and I don't think it really would, given the shape of these rocks. So perhaps it's best if I don't. Also, I don't know if that is super audible, but I can distinctly hear, not super distinctly, but I can hear something that sounds like a bell. A bell tower bell. I suppose the bell tower bells, they just call them bells. Hence why it's called a bell tower. And I suppose that's where the bell tower bell sound is coming from. I've wedged my hammer here in a bit of an awkward position. There we go, that's much better. Fortunately, with the exception of oranges and cups, everything in this game is pretty sturdy. I was a little bit startled there, if you can believe it. Alright. Yes. Oh dear. Okay. I thought maybe I'd soft-locked myself there a little bit. I feel like, even with the difficulty of this game, it's probably... I imagine Mr. Foddy was probably thorough enough with testing it that he probably didn't let many soft blocks through. At least not ones that are as pretty easy to accomplish as that one that I thought that I had accomplished, but was not in fact a soft block. Alright. Alright, so we're now pretty thoroughly beyond our previous point of, I was going to say no return, but more a point where we...
It feels like we're closer now. Composer and climber, designer and user.
We get to talk
You could
to
have
Bennett
refused,
Foddy
but
again.
you didn't. There was something in you that was hidden, that chose to continue.
Thanks, Bennett. Good to hear from you again. Yeah, I don't think we heard a single word from Bennett Foddy for the entirety of the previous stream, on account of the almost complete lack of progress made. Ooh, a hat. So I wonder... I was sort of avoiding this smaller rock, because I felt like this would be an awkward angle. But I might need the extra height. So if I can position myself on the corner here, if I can. There we are. That didn't go so well. Fortunately, we're in a relatively safe position here. So I can't... Unless I really make a truly dreadful mistake, I shouldn't lose too much progress. But yes, I shouldn't be sent careening back down to the start at the very least. I wonder if maybe this is a point where I need to go a little bit faster. There we are. Alright, well, we were almost there. Yes, got very close. Alright. I've positioned my microphone cord poorly. I packed all of my streaming gear up, and with the expectation that I'd be using it at the other house. But since I didn't end up doing that, I had to sort of put everything back into something resembling its original order. And I definitely got the position of the microphone cable a bit wrong because it keeps catching on things, and it's bothersome. More specifically, it catches on the mouse. It doesn't necessarily impede my movement in any real way, especially now that I've moved it out of the way. But I'm always worried that I was worried that I'd like pull on it too hard and produce an unpleasant noise. I am exceptionally averse to producing unpleasant noises. Oops. Oh well. So I'm trying to devise a strategy here. I think probably I need to push off a little bit harder, push downwards a little bit harder. And I don't know, this might actually be somewhat of a poor angle. I think if I angle myself, because yeah, if I just push off here, then I'll deflect. But if I angle myself a little bit outwards, I shouldn't deflect as much, if at all. And I think that should probably preserve more upwards momentum. That seems like something that might reasonably happen anyway. I also wanted to try going from this lower rock again, but I think we'll keep going off the higher rock. We'll just try to, again, angle our launch a little bit better. No avail thus far, but it is what it is. Actually, no, that's not it. I probably could, actually. Yeah, if I keep it at... No. If I keep the hammer at a greater length, I might be able to, like, if I don't pull myself in... Yeah, I'm trying to sort of keep it fully extended so I can get, like, the maximum amount of leverage to launch myself upwards as much as I can without interacting with the underside of this boulder and deflecting off. But I do seem to just keep pulling myself in. So this may be either I'm doing it wrong or I'm not. Yeah, I can get pretty good height there. But I guess I did pull myself in quite a bit there. So it might just come down to launching. Oh. Nice. Handle. Alright. Unfortunate. Oh, okay. I was expecting this to be a very significant drop, but it's not. I was kind of hoping that I could produce a more... I don't know, I was hoping that the sound of hitting the anvil would be a little bit more sonorous, perhaps. Which is why I spent the time to hit it there. Alright, now we're just getting impatient. Let's calm down a little bit. Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere else that I need to go here. I just need to, there we go.
No.
Just a matter of launching yourself with the right velocity, right angle. The angle's not too precise there, I don't think, but yeah, this is starting to look a little bit familiar in a slightly foreboding way. I think I know what's coming here.
It means a lot to me that you've come this far, endured this much. Every wisecrack, every insensitivity, every setback you've forgiven me is a kingly gift that you've given me.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Bennett. Yeah, I've enjoyed this so far. Quite frankly, again, I felt a little bit lonely almost without the Bennett Foddy comments during the previous stream. All right. So I thought I knew what I was supposed to do here, but maybe I don't actually. I feel like I should just launch myself a little bit. Off to the left. Oh, yep, there we are. Yeah, I was going to say I felt like launching myself, but I wasn't 100% sure if that was what I was supposed to do at this point.
Oh, no.
Oh dear. Alright. So, now that I think about it, I don't remember where I launched myself from last time, so... Oh, okay, there we go. I think that was it. I mean, if not, one way or another we succeeded, so I guess it doesn't matter what I did last time, as long as I succeed this time. Yeah, there is a certain springiness to our main character's arms. So I suppose that is at least part of why the strategy of trying to catch myself with the hammer doesn't always work. I'm not going to go so far as to say that it usually doesn't work, but I don't feel like it has as good of a track record as the confidence that I invest in it would seem to suggest. It always seems to be the accidental launches that have the most power behind them. I guess maybe it might be that launching yourself straight up isn't tremendously effective. At least not the way that I'm doing it. Yeah, it seems that if I... Yeah, I don't think I can get as much speed pushing off like this, like I was, as I can doing it in an altogether more sudden motion.
No.
Like I've said, there's virtue in both speed and in precision. So I guess it all comes down to how much distance I need to cover at once.
No.
Alright, not bad. Not too good either, but we made it onto the next rock, so I can't complain. And away we go, and down we go. Nice. Interesting. There have been quite a few physics. Well, there have been 3 physics objects in this game total, including that hat. But other than that hat, I don't think any of the others really allowed us to launch off of them or to really interact with them beyond knocking them around. Because there's the orange from earlier, the orange from the start of the stream, and then there was a coffee cup early on that I think probably, yeah, it was pretty low down on the mountain, so probably we encountered that in the first stream. And we've certainly encountered it since then, but our first encounter with it was then. Yeah, I've been trying to sort of implement my theory of momentum in this game, but I don't think this probably isn't again, like I've tried to actually it might have something to do with momentum actually. Because yeah, I've been treating the hammer just like the force it propels you with is just a factor of essentially just pushing the mouse. Like it's just a matter of how you swing the mouse. Like if you just push downwards all the way, you should get a full launch. But it might have some momentum to it, actually. It might have some momentum to it, which would then allow us to launch ourselves a little bit better if we make use of that momentum. And that might be why, when I sort of swing suddenly and do a relatively wide swing, I can launch myself a little bit farther than I can if I just do like this. If nothing else, in theory, going from here to here should give me somewhat more power than going from here to here. A bit less control, maybe. But I think maybe. I think physics was never really my strongest subject, but I think I don't know, I was going to use the term angular momentum, but I've realized now that I really don't know what that means, to be honest. Certainly there are angles involved, and there is momentum. There is some sort of momentum going on. But again, I don't want to use imprecise language, or worse, use the wrong language. That is simply unacceptable.
No.
Yeah, it definitely seems that a more sudden movements do tend to give me more force, which makes sense from what I understand of physics. It's a little bit unintuitive to me, I think, because again, like I said, I've sort of been treating it like it's just sort of like the power that you launch yourself with is purely a factor of how far away from you the hammer gets, basically. But I'm definitely starting to think there's more to it than that. And we don't need to launch ourselves with too much force to get back up here. I was probably overdoing it a little bit there.
No.
And we couldn't get more of Bennett Foddy's speech there. Or we couldn't maintain our momentum of hearing Bennett Foddy talk. Unfortunate. I believe in you. Thank you, Madrosity. And thank you for stopping by as well. How are you doing today? Alright. So, I think probably I should put into practice what I've been talking about. And swing. Well, okay, that didn't work. I was going to say swing with great force. Yeah, alright. My meals were burgers today. Well, at least you had more than one meal. Or, well, maybe you didn't from the way that you put meals in quotation marks, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do, I suppose. Even if you could, yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. Yes, I hope you are doing well, generally speaking, though. Yeah, they were delish. Today was more grazing. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, were they like fast food type burgers, or were these homemade type, or perhaps even restaurant type? Because yeah, I suppose hamburgers and the like are definitely associated with fast food restaurants. They are served in other places as well. Not much of a fan of fast food myself. Yeah, generally I don't like fast food because it is typically somewhat pretty greasy. Yeah, restaurant from one of those shadow restaurants, $5 burgers with decent meat and toppings. I've got to say, I've never. You need to do a grocery shopping run though, and need to decide what I want to eat. That's always a bit tricky. I do want to. I do want to tell a little bit of a story about my own past with meal decision making, and all that. But first, I'm going to ask. I've never heard the term shadow restaurant before, so I've got to. I do. I would like to know what that means, because it sounds a bit like you've transported yourself to some sort of alternate realm to seek the forbidden burgers. Let's take a sip real quick. Sip. All right. And nope, that's not going to work. Not the right angle, not enough force. That was a little bit too much force, I think. Or at least too much force on the... Because yeah, I always sort of try to push down. I always try to push down when I make it onto a ledge or whatnot, in the hopes of steadying myself. But I think maybe
Oh no.
that might not actually be ideal. Yeah, Shadow Restaurant is a restaurant on like Uber Eats or Grubhub that doesn't actually exist. It's delivery only, usually based inside another restaurant that has slow times. My old place, the Ruby Tuesday, was also a Bao restaurant and a Mr. Beast burger restaurant. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. I think I've heard of that concept, but I've never heard them referred to as a shadow restaurant. Shadow restaurant, I think, is probably the coolest way that they could be referred to, though. So yeah. So anyway, now that that is settled, I will tell you all the story of how for approximately a year I had the same 3 meals basically every day for the same 3 meals every day for about a year. So when I was in college, I, or I guess it was right after I got out of college, actually. There may have been a little bit of overlap between the time that I was in college and the time that the time that this occurred. But there wasn't much, not more than perhaps a month or so. But yeah, so I guess it probably wasn't actually a year, I don't think. It was probably a little bit less than that. But the more I second guess myself, the less compelling this story seems. So,
No.
for somewhere approximating a year, around the time after I got out of college, I decided, you know what? I want to make sure that I'm getting, I'm living a busy life here, working this job and all that. I actually I definitely was taking some classes at that point. So it wasn't yeah. Okay. So, I'm doing some classes, doing a few online classes to finish up the last of what I needed to accomplish for my degree. And I was working, and I was renting a place to live, living on my own and all of that. So I decided, I want to ensure that I'm eating reasonably healthy, I want to minimize the time that I spend preparing food, thinking about what to eat, and all that. So I decided that what I was going to do was I was going to just decide a few things to eat. What on earth? Ah. Yes, anyway. I resolved to decide on a few items that I would eat. Again, with the intention of minimizing cost and prep time and decision making so that I could spend as much time so I could have more free time basically and not have to, because I didn't have a whole lot in between school and work at that point. So what I decided to do was I chose as my breakfast meal I chose multigrain Cheerios because they are enriched with various vitamins and minerals such that they have like 100% of your daily recommended total of a few, I don't know, I don't remember how many offhand, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, give or take. But yeah, so somewhere around 10. And so to shore up on the rest, I decided I would have, for cereal, I would have, or for breakfast, I would have a bowl of, I would have a bowl of multigrain Cheerios. For dinner, I would have a single chicken thigh quarter. Yeah, so basically the whole leg of the bird, excepting the feet. A chicken thigh quarter, skin on, because that was the cheapest way to get them. Yeah, a whole chicken thigh quarter, and broccoli and sweet potatoes. And then for lunch, because I got basically all of my nutritional requirements settled by lunch or by breakfast and dinner. For the sake of calories and because I liked them, I would have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch. And that was it. That was what I ate every day for most of the days. Occasionally, bowl of multigrain, PB&J, and a single thigh plus leg. Yeah, broccoli and sweet potatoes. Indeed. So it was not a terribly unhealthy menu, all things considered. And it was not... Yeah, can you even handle that flavor now? I can. I enjoyed them all the entire time that I was eating them. And I enjoy them still to this day. Yeah, I'm not the sort of person, like, I don't like to eat the same thing multiple times in a day, but I can very easily eat the same foods multiple days in a row, and as I've demonstrated, multiple weeks in a row, multiple months in a row. But yeah. So that's not a huge concern to me. Essentially, the only real concern that I had from this was eventually I got to a point where I was feeling very tired most of the time. And so I decided to revise my menu a little bit. And I realized that what I was eating, I wasn't spending much money on it and I wasn't spending much time on it, but I also wasn't getting enough calories out of it was the issue. So, I only got, I think this was, I don't know, it was less than 2,000 calories a day, I think I was eating. Doing great? Thank you. But yes, it was less than 2,000 calories a day that I was eating when I was following this meal plan, which, is not necessarily ideal. I was working in a restaurant at the time, so I was doing a lot of, very physical work for extended periods of time. So I think, the recommendation for an adult male, as I am, is I think somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2,200 calories a day to 3,000 calories a day, generally speaking. And I was definitely, I was getting about half of that
Oh.
on the high end. And I almost certainly was on the high end, considering, again, I had a very physically demanding job. So, yeah, I was losing weight. I was losing weight, I noticed, but I didn't really want to. I probably could stand to lose a little bit of weight, but, if I'm losing weight, I want to lose weight in a way that's, like, measured and careful. Nutritional balance is the weirdest thing? Yeah. Yeah, if I'm going to lose weight, I want to do so intentionally, not just because I'm getting really a lot less energy from my food each day than I would prefer to, or that is recommended to. So essentially, I just decided to pad things out a little bit. So I decided that in addition to multigrain Cheerios each morning, I would also have a bowl of oatmeal. For lunch, I also added in, I would have some chips and some salsa. Specifically, I would eat Sun Chips. Those are my favorite chip. Not a huge fan of potato chips in general. I'm definitely a corn chip appreciator more so. Yeah, so Sun Chips and salsa. And I also switched to, instead of just eating instead of just having bread, I would eat them off of I would make these sandwiches with a bagel. Or, additional mass and calories and all that. And then I didn't really add anything to my dinner menu, but I also added I would have a very specific amount of ice cream each day. Yeah, just so all of this, so I could just get in some more calories, so that I could maintain a bit of a better energy input to output. But yeah. So that again lasted for about a year. It ended when I moved into the place that I'm currently living in, because now the people that I live with do pretty much all of the grocery shopping and also most of the cooking. Yeah, left to my own devices, I probably would end up in maybe not the exact same situation, but a similar situation of not eating a tremendous variety of different things. I would probably end up optimizing for nutrition and speed and cost again, versus optimizing for, or even really considering, novelty. And this is probably, I should clarify that I am not a qualified nutritionist, so it's entirely possible that what I was doing was a bad idea. Again, after I solved the issue of the issue of not getting enough calories, I did feel a lot better generally, day in and day out. So I never felt like I was, in terrible peril, nutritionally speaking. But, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this. I wouldn't necessarily recommend what I did.
Oh no.
I would say if you're going to have a very specific and restricted diet, you might want to consult any source, basically, instead of just looking at the nutrition facts on the backs of various boxes and deciding, okay, how can I get the most nutrients in the quickest time for the lowest cost? All right. So, been here for a while. I'd like to not be here specifically. I suppose not here specifically is a bit vague. I might end up going backwards if I try to follow that to the letter. So let's try to make forward progress.
Oh.
Yeah, I completely lost track of what I did to get over this anvil and onto the next cliff during my little story time there. So pardon me as I try to rediscover the secrets. Alright, that was probably one of the worst launches we've gotten so far, I think. Hmm. How do I want to go about this? I think... Hmm. No, I think I need to... Like I was saying, I think I need to get a little bit more power behind my swings there. Go a little bit higher up before... Well, that was a bad angle, but... Hmm. Hmm. I guess there is a certain amount of variability in how the game reads my inputs. Hmm. Maybe not variability is not the word I'm looking for, but the game is pretty consistent with, there's no randomness to it. It's just I don't always move in a super precise way. That was pretty close. All right. That was a pretty good launch. Could have been a better launch. We didn't actually make it, but it wasn't bad. Yeah, I kind of want to start another story here, but I'm afraid that if I take too much focus away from my climbing, I will stay here for the rest of the stream, which is not ideal. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty close. I can't say how close, necessarily, but I think I'm pretty close to... There we go. Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're getting pretty close to the end. You might still be a stream or two away. Alright, that definitely wasn't going to work.
No.
I also currently have some sort of insect in my room that is on the edge of my monitor. Hopefully it doesn't decide to interfere with our business here.
No.
Alright, last time... Yeah, that's not going to work. I was going to say, last time I tried to very slowly inch the hammer along that edge. Alright, that didn't work. Yeah, I tried to very slowly inch the hammer along that edge to pick ourselves up, but yeah, it didn't do very well for me. So I was hoping that maybe, just by going with a little bit more speed, I could achieve something here. Not enough height, unfortunately. No, yeah, that slipped a little bit too much. It was also much closer. I guess more so, it was further away from the edge, so I probably wouldn't have slipped as much there. So that might have actually been a pretty good position that I was in. That was not a good launch, though, unfortunately. No. This might work. Yes, this did work. Nice. So let's be very careful here. A little bit more careful than that. Lift ourselves slowly. No. No, that's not it. Alright. So, down and away. Nope. Yeah, now we're on the edge again. What? Oh. No, I think I've lost it. Oh, okay. Salvaged. Nice. Now the question... Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, I was sort of thinking that I would need to launch myself from that lower area that we were just at onto this rock that we're on right now. But it seems that that's not strictly necessary. Ah, bad angle. And yeah, flubbed it a little bit on the recovery there, unfortunately. Yeah, I guess part of the issue, one thing that I'm not really taking into account as much as I ought to be, is that, you have a certain amount of force that you come down with when you fall. And, such is the way of things, is that you fall faster the longer that you fall, up to a certain point. And yeah, one thing I very rarely take into account when planning how I'm going to do any of these is the fact that, if I've been falling for a while, I'm going to hit the ground with more force and be more likely to deflect off of it, to bounce and all that, rather than just to do whatever I desired to do. Oops. Missed my target there. Yes, the worst thing about this insect is that it sort of, it comes and goes, basically. I can never be sure.
No.
I can never be quite sure where it's going to go or what it's going to do. If it just wanted to sit still and observe, perhaps, that wouldn't be a huge issue. I'm going to take a sip real quick. A little bit warm today. Not necessarily warm outside warm. Probably it's rather cold today, which is why it's warm in here. That's the funny thing. Yeah, with the, I tend to keep my door shut. My door shut and my windows shut and all that for, noise cancellation reasons. But that does mean that my room is very, very insulated. Very insulated while I'm streaming. So, there's nowhere really for heat to go or to come from, per se. So during the summer, I tend to be pretty cold when I'm streaming. And during the winter and fall, which it is now, I tend to be quite warm. Because yeah, I'm pretty close to the vent. Pretty close to the vent in my room. My desk is. Yeah, not close enough that I can feel the air blowing on me to fully confirm whether or not that is what is the issue here, and not perhaps just the 2 computers that I'm running and the heat that they generate. But it distinctly does feel warmer now than it did in warmer seasons. I think the air conditioning and heating system probably has a fair amount to do with that whole business. Is this... No, that's not going to get me anywhere. Again, it really does feel a lot of the time. I'm trying to sort of replicate it. But it feels a lot like the accidental launches that I get are some of the most forceful. And again, I think that's probably due in large part to sort of as I've noticed, the springiness of our friend's arms. Because, yeah, the hammer doesn't just, hit a point and stay there, necessarily. Like, if you're still going down, you will go down a little bit more and the hammer will spring up. But the hammer will try to, correct itself, make its way to the pointer, which will then, launch you up again.
What?
Again, not able to replicate that effect here.
Oh no.
Unfortunate. I think this might be pretty close to the longest I've spent on a single specific obstacle.
What?
Yeah, there have definitely been, and when I say specific obstacle, there's definitely obstacles that I've been to and from more often than this one. So when I say on a specific obstacle, I mean without, making it to a further point, falling off and making our way back to that initial obstacle.
What?
I might need to be,
Oh.
one thing I need to angle myself a little bit better. I'm not getting the right, I'm either launching too far, I guess, yeah, too far in sort of too close to, what would it be? I guess if angles are relative, I suppose, generally speaking, but if we're assuming that this is 0 degrees, then that's 90 degrees. Well, I mean, if this is 0 degrees, if up is 0 degrees, right is 90 degrees necessarily, that's how it works. But angles aren't that relative that you can just make anything up, but with the reference point of up as 0 degrees, yeah, I'm launching myself either generally too close to 0 or too close to 90. Which is a funny and unnecessarily verbose way of saying that I'm not very good at calculating what angle I'm trying to aim for. But what I just said is also pretty complicated and verbose. So
Oh.
that was pretty good.
Oh.
There we didn't have the height, unfortunately.
What?
Okay, yeah, that.
What?
Let me try something real quick.
What?
I'm not expecting to be able to get there doing that, necessarily, that specific motion that I was doing. But I was wanting to see, because yeah, definitely the greater the distance the hammer travels, the more force you get, it seems like. And of course, this is a discovery that I've already made. I guess I'm just sort of trying to see how to apply it in more situations, more so than anything else. Yeah, very precise. I feel like this probably isn't, it doesn't need to be as precise as I'm making it.
No.
There might be something I'm missing here. I might actually be able to, well, I was going to say bounce off that wall, but I don't think there's anywhere I can get a good grip on our way to that cliffside. I can certainly try to bounce off of these rocks here, but I don't think that would get us to where we need to be. Yeah, like by the time I get to that lower set of rocks that I'm pointing at right now, to the best of my abilities, that one that has sort of an upward angled surface that I could reasonably bounce off of, I feel like I'd have too much downwards momentum, and so I could, at best I'd just sort of launch myself back this way rather than up. And then, if I tried to bounce off of the downward sloping rock face, then obviously I'll just launch myself downwards. Nope. Definitely, that definitely wasn't going to be a successful attempt, I don't think. I don't think that was destined for anything. Hmm. All right. Hmm.
What?
That was not bad.
What?
It wasn't good. It wasn't good either, but it wasn't too bad. No. Unfortunate.
What?
No. It wasn't too long ago that I was doing this pretty consistently. I wonder what I'm missing now.
Oh.
Maybe just more confidence.
Oh.
Because yeah, I haven't been... After sort of a string of failures, I stopped sort of raising the hammer quite so much as I did just in those past 2 attempts. So maybe I just, like I said, the hammer just needs to travel farther to get us more force. The position probably... I haven't been too careful with my positioning, but it probably is pretty useful, pretty important. Because we're getting very close. We're getting very close, but we're not quite making it. So probably, if I just inched over a little bit more, that would be tremendously helpful. But of course, if I go too far right, and I'm not going to have a good surface to launch off of. There we are. Yeah, that one, I was a little bit further left than I had been attempting to be.
Oh.
Nope. Okay. I need to launch myself just far enough to clear this. There we go. To clear this little slope here, because I can't rest on that. It's too steep. But if I land on this slope too hard, then obviously then I'll have the issue. Then I'll just deflect off of it and fall anyway. Not bad, not bad. So we're back here. And I'm being probably too cautious here, unnecessarily so.
What? No. What? Oh.
Nope. Okay. So, cease. And there we go. Not bad. No, I'm not getting a good angle here. I think again I need to move with more. I need a wider swing. I'm definitely at a point where, oh dear, I need to move with confidence. And yeah, that's sort of a lesson that I forgot. A lesson that I forgot during the discussion of my previous dietary habits. Oops. So it's always interesting whenever the cursor gets like really far removed from the actual position of the hammer, because that doesn't happen very often. Okay, so I'm definitely failing to achieve my goal here as well. 'Cause yeah, again, I was applying... There I was trying to apply the technique that I was applying at the anvil. But this isn't a place for that sort of swing. This needs a more vertical, or... Oh, actually, yeah, vertical, yeah. I will admit, I definitely still get vertical and horizontal mixed up a lot more than I would like to admit. Mostly just because my brain sort of, whenever I am going to use either term, my brain tends to default to saying vertical. I always say vertical first. And then I sort of think, oh wait, hold on. Is that what I mean to say? And then if it's horizontal, then obviously no. But when it is vertical, and I definitely use the term, or I definitely mean to use the term horizontal more than I mean to use the term vertical. But when it is vertical, then I suppose I should just trust my instincts. Oops. Yeah, I don't know why that's a pair of terms that I particularly struggle with. Vertical and horizontal. I guess because it's sort of, I do associate horizontal with, the horizon, which is a more or less horizontal line on sort of a conscious level. But I guess on an unconscious level, the connection isn't as much there. Just adjust my mouse pad a little bit. Slipped a little bit. Okay, very good. Nope, not the right angle. Alright, there we go. Good angle, good force. It's probably I guess there's probably a word for that. I want to say vector, but I don't think that's not accurate, because a vector doesn't have anything to do with force. It's just an angle and distance, I think, basically, is what composes a vector. Some days I do want to sort of review some of the math that I learned in the past. Not that it's tremendously... Yeah, I don't need to calculate vectors very often. So it's not of tremendous practical value to me. But, I don't know, math was a subject that I enjoyed. I just kind of liked knowing it. I liked knowing things about math. The subjects I enjoyed the most in my education were definitely tended to be the ones that were sort of systematic, in particular math. I didn't like history very much, ironically, but I didn't like history very much because, there is no formula to it necessarily. Like, there are things that happen, sort of patterns that occur, perhaps, but, you cannot calculate a whole lot in history. You cannot simply you cannot memorize a certain principle by which things work and expect that to provide you with precise results every time. Because it's a very, every single human being on this earth contributes to history every single day. It's a very complex and nuanced subject. Not something that can be easily summarized or broken down into specific laws that you can learn. Yeah, I like to learn how systems work and how to apply them. That's usually sort of one of the things that I enjoy the most. I like sort of problem solving in that way, I suppose. But yeah, so math, I like math to a certain extent. Yeah, I liked math. I liked, yeah, that's also plays a lot into my taste in games, and even more so, my taste in tabletop role-playing games. I usually gravitate more towards ones with more complex systems. complex systems with lots of different options, different choices you can make. Because I don't really like to optimize characters per se, but I do like to come up with ideas of, okay, I want to, rather than do simply what is ideal, I want to come up with an idea and figure out the best way to implement it, the most effective way to implement it. Not what weapon is the best, but how do I make the best use of the specific weapon that I've decided that my character is going to specialize in, and things like that. And so yeah, systems without sort of options to let you specialize in specific types of weapons and such, specific applications of specific abilities or whatever, I tend to not favor them so much. Of course, that's not necessarily the only factor, but, things like that. Again, I like to learn systems, and I like to problem solve. Oops. Yeah, and I like when things work consistently, I guess. Yeah, I really am built for math. All right. Nope. All right. All right. Oh, interesting. I just noticed the hammer doesn't cast a shadow. That's neat. I wonder if there's a specific reason for that. I think, actually, now that I sort of examine the hammer a little bit closer, it does seem to definitely be, I don't know, it seems like it is a 2D object. It seems like it's 2D, whereas the rest of our leading man here is apparently 3D. It seems to be 3D. Well, I guess if it's not 3D, this is some incredible sprite work, honestly. So I think probably he is 3D. Because yeah, it would be not impossible, but it would be extraordinarily impractical to draw all of the different poses that you can get our friend into. Very impractical indeed. And there's probably some ways that you could sort of cheat it, I guess, if you really wanted to make him 2D. But it's probably better to make him 3D. It would save you a lot of effort. Oh dear. All right. So, we're going to focus, and we're going to apply the appropriate motions to solving this specific problem. Or maybe we won't, I guess. I think probably... Yeah, the problem is I just, we get stuck on other obstacles for so long that I forget how to do previous obstacles. I think I'm a little bit too far to the right here. Oh dear. Oh well. Alright, so, let's try this again, shall we? That was a pretty forceful, confident swing, but unfortunately it was a little bit overconfident because it didn't achieve much. That needed a better angle, but it wasn't too bad otherwise. That, again, better angle. All right. Nope. All right. A little bit more momentum there. There we are. Very good. Very good. And very carefully. Very carefully. I'm slipping a little bit, but I think I should be able to make it. There we go. And so once again, we will cautiously, not too carefully, but we will mindfully make our way here. And then that could have been a... Yeah, I was going to say that could have been better. I think probably my slowness... Yeah, that was an example of me trying to extend the hammer and it not working out so well. I always sort of think, again, of the hammer as being what I use to arrest my fall. But I can, you know, sometimes I can just land on things, is the thing. Because I don't want to always, if I land directly on the hammer, that wasn't a good example of it, because I didn't, but yeah, if I land directly on the hammer, hmm, maybe this isn't the best place to show it, but with the way that the camera seems to be inclined to work, but I don't know, sometimes when I land on the hammer, and maybe it's just that I'm not holding the mouse steady enough or something, but sometimes it seems to sort of spring upwards again. I might be focusing a little bit too much on the... Oh, that was very unfortunate. Yes, I might be focusing a little bit too much on the reticle, targeting circle, the cursor even. Realization that I suddenly came to is that I don't know where the term cursor comes from. It definitely... I can't think of any specific... I can't think of any similar words. Any sort of etymological relatives that it might have. Because, yeah, something like a computer mouse. I can vaguely see... Whoops. I can see the resemblance between a computer mouse and the creature known as the mouse. I'm going to take a sip real quick. Sip. Yeah, I can see the resemblance between a computer mouse and the creature known as the mouse. Yeah, but I don't know...
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things, computer components that, have names that I can intuit where you might come up with them. Because a keyboard, it's a board, and it has keys on it.
Oh, no.
Mouse pad, which I guess isn't a part of a computer, but I guess a mouse and a keyboard aren't also aren't parts of computers. At least not in the sense that they are not inside of the computer. But, a mouse pad is a pad that you put the mouse on. Oops. And again, a lot of the sort of internal components have relatively simple names that are pretty straightforward. Like a central processing unit, it is the, it is the center of most of the processing action that the computer does. The the graphical processing unit, it's where the graphics go. It's where they are processed. Random access memory, it is the memory that you access. Cursor, circa 1300, has a surname, a running messenger, from Latin cursor, runner, also errand boy. From curse, past participle stem of cur, or I don't know how to pronounce that precisely. I'm not too well versed in Latin. Yeah, to run, from Proto-Indo-European root, curse, to run, from 1950s as part of a slide rule or other instrument that slides backwards and forwards on another part. Okay, the computer screen sense is a 1967 extension of this. Alright, that makes sense. Yes, thank you very much for your input, Madrasity. Another thing I like learning about is and still like learning about quite a bit is I do like to learn about words. Yeah, that is why I tend to be unnecessarily verbose, I would say. I have a tendency to be a bit unnecessarily verbose and use bigger words than are perhaps necessary for a given to convey a certain idea. I tend to not describe things as simply as I could, because I very early on in my language learning days got into the habit of learning more specific and bigger words, basically just so I could impress people. It would, you know, when I was a child, absolutely suggest get a book on Victorian slang. That sounds like something that could be interesting. But yeah, so when I was a child, you know, I like to learn about words and all that. I like to learn more words, and the adults in my life would be very impressed with the words that I knew and my ability to use them. And so it sort of, it would become, it was self-reinforcing. I would be praised for learning, so I would want to learn more, and I would learn more, and I would become more verbose, and so on and so forth, until I get to a point today where I definitely struggle a lot of the time in trying to express thoughts in simple terms, even to myself, really. Yeah, brevity is the soul of wit, as they say. There's definitely, you know, I like to think it can be funny sometimes to deliberately use unnecessarily long and verbose descriptions of things. There's a humor to be had in that as well. But, it's all about what's best for the moment, what's best for what you're doing, what message you want to send, and all that. Oops. And so to sum up this anvil in one word, as simply and succinctly as I possibly can, troublesome. Oops. But yeah. I guess beyond, related to the concept of reading a book about Victorian slang, I recently did some research into into books, basically, just to see. I brought up a few streams ago, a few getting over it streams ago, the idea that I liked. There was a lot of classic literature that I enjoyed, a lot of books that I've read in the past that I liked, a lot of poetry that I liked, and I thought, I might like to do a stream where I read some of this or something like that. And so I decided to look into it a little bit, and as far as I can tell, it is, as long as yeah, used to big word, then think small word, say what big word without other person need no big word. That is very, that's very true. It's very true. You have to, again, there's no virtue in using unnecessarily complicated language. Big word not good if small word accomplish job better. You know, big word not good if small word good enough. Big word can be good if want use big word. Big word can be good if want use big word for literary or poetic purposes, but not use too big word when smaller word is appropriate. See, can't even think of small word for appropriate. Good, I guess. I've been saying good, so me say good more. It's all a balance, you know. Yeah, that does bring me back to the live alive streams. Other issue, of course, is I'm a reader and I can't say half the words in my vocabulary. Fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, I usually, whenever I whenever I learn a new word, I pretty quickly, one of the first things I do is I look it up to learn what the pronunciation is. There's probably a lot of words that I do pronounce in an odd way. That would make sense. Yeah. There's a lot of words that I probably do pronounce in a bit of an odd way. But yeah, I typically, when I learn a word, I usually go and I try to learn how to say it, so that I don't run into the issue of knowing a word but not knowing how to properly pronounce it. Oops. Yeah, there I sort of ran into the issue that I sort of ran into my mic stand. I don't think that was audible, but I bumped it with my arm, and so I held back. I held back. Although intentionally using small words does make you end up in the 1984 situation where you can't express concepts so you don't have the words to describe them. That is true. That is true. Yeah, so I guess to get back to the topic that I was about to talk about, um, yeah, I looked into it, and it does seem that, you know, as long as I either have the rights to read the book, or as long as I have the rights to perform the book or poem or whatever, or if those rights are, you know, if they're no longer under copyright due to the age of the work, then I can pretty much without restriction, you know, read out, you know, poetry from whoever on stream or whatever. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any sort of restriction as long as, you know, either I have the rights, which I probably wouldn't be able to secure the rights for anything that is still under that is not in the public domain yet, because I don't have that sort of budget, nor do I have the sort of nor do I have any knowledge of who I would contact to get permissions for that. Yeah, I do not have a budget and I do not have a legal team. But yeah, anyway, so again, any work that is in the public domain, as far as I can tell, I could just, if I wanted to, pull up and read on stream at any time, and you know, have no issues with the stream or keeping it up or anything. Sadly though, I did want to read some one of the books that I mentioned that I particularly enjoyed in my English classes. One of the books that I particularly enjoyed was The Old Man and the Sea, but unfortunately, I think, as I understand it, that one is still not in the public domain. So I wouldn't be able to read that one, I think, for probably another decade or so, if I'm remembering how long things stay copyrighted and all that. If I'm remembering how long things stay copyrighted and approximately when it was written. Or I guess published. It's based on when it was published, not when it was written. Alright. Yeah, so as I was saying, with regards to the Live Alive, I remember I had a lot of fun in the first and thus far only Live Alive stream that we've done, because that was the caveman chapter of the game, where I decided to get into character by only speak in small simple word for everything, as much as possible, and that was very fun. it was a good exercise in deliberate word choice. Where again, my word choice when I'm speaking casually is fairly advanced. Again, I use more elaborate sentence structures and words than I perhaps need to, but it all comes very intuitively to me because that's how I practice speaking when I was learning how to speak English, basically. And that's just sort of how I've kept talking as time has gone on. Oops. All right, that was ill considered. That you might even say. Yeah. So while I think most, if not all, of Hemingway's writing is out of my reach again for years to decades, Shakespeare is definitely within the realm of what could be what I could read on stream, and I like Shakespeare quite a bit as well. While I was sort of reading about literature, I sort of stumbled onto a few sort of related topics. In particular, I learned about what is considered to be by some like the first science fiction story. It was written by an individual whose name I don't remember precisely. I think it was Lucian of something, some location. Yes, he was I believe a Greek man living in the second or well, somewhere between the 2nd and 4th century, I think. And he wrote a story that involved, traveling to the moon and the sun and a war between the two and all sorts of other worlds and strange creatures that lived in them and all that. Yeah, it's considered by some to be the very first science fiction. And definitely, you know, that was before the concept of science fiction existed, obviously. But so it could not have been deliberately, science fiction in the way that, say, a science fiction book that I would write or could write would be. So yeah, it definitely has a lot of overlap with sort of our current ideas about science fiction. A lot of, given that it's over a millennium old, a lot of very antiquated notion, sort of notions. There's not, I feel like there's not a whole lot of consensus on what precisely is science fiction. Because there's some people who say that, any science fiction is basically any sort of story that focuses on technology, basically, that focuses on technology. And there are some people who say, oh, science fiction is only fiction that writes about specifically technology that could exist, something that might exist at some point in the future, or that perhaps could exist now if we, if we figured out how to do it, basically. That's it. Yeah, there are some, again, who say basically any fiction story that emphasizes technology is science fiction. There are some people who say that only fiction that tries to present something that not only is technology, but is something that could, presumably, given our understanding of the world, reasonably exist, is science fiction. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of other views between those two and, beyond just those two dimensions. But yeah, so this story, which is the title can be translated as either true history or a true story, I think, basically, or, slight variations on those two. Yeah, I got around to reading a little bit of it. It was definitely interesting. It was definitely interesting to see just sort of, again, what is perhaps, depending on how you define it, the first science fiction story.
Mm.
Yeah, it's also interesting to see sort of the differences in opinions. I've heard some people who take the view that science fiction is sort of a general term, and fantasy refers to a specific type of science fiction. And these people presumably also belonging to the camp that, science fiction doesn't necessarily have to depict something that could reasonably happen given our understanding of the world. Yeah, some people who say that fantasy is a type of science fiction, and there are some people I've seen who are of the view that science fiction is a type of fantasy. Yeah, there's definitely overlap between the two concepts, if nothing else. I wouldn't say that I'm well versed enough in literary theory to be able to say specifically to really weigh in on this. But it's always interesting to see other people's opinions of it. I suppose I tipped my hand a little bit in that my own sort of personal opinion is roughly along the lines of these are essentially two separate genres. Yeah, I say the reverse sci-fi subset of fantasy. Yeah. I don't know. Personally, I think of fantasy as a specific. I think of sci-fi and fantasy as being related. There's overlap between them, I think. Again, that they can share a lot of ideas and themes and all that. Sort of typical ideas and themes. But I think of them as being separate genres. Oops. Yeah, like I said, I do always like to see different people's opinions and sort of how they come to those opinions. Yeah, so if you've thought of it, what makes you think of sci-fi as being a type of fantasy? If you don't mind elaborating, Madrasity. I suppose you probably didn't come here to also say books that in the modern world are fantasy. Hmm. Yeah, I think fantasy can be set in the modern world. I think, but I feel like it's important to distinguish between fantasy and fiction. Like I feel like a story that essentially aims to present something that could happen or could have happened in our world as we understand it. I think that's, something that could have happened or could happen or might happen, but isn't necessarily something that did happen. I feel like that's fiction, broadly speaking. I think fiction is a good super term for it. Whereas if it is specifically, I think that I think of science fiction as being a type of fiction that again focuses on science and technology and sort of the notion of what could we accomplish, what would happen if we had these sort of this greater understanding of the world than we do. What if we had this technology or that technology without necessarily it being a technology that reasonably could exist, literally could exist. I'd say fantasy is any fantastical thing, which I, as the reader, wouldn't be able to experience, so sci fi is fantastical, as I won't ever be able to visit the stars. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I guess I sort of think of fantasy as being specifically. Yeah, would you say Star Wars is not. Then would you say Star Wars is not sci fi? Again, I think that they can overlap. I think that I think that a story can be science fiction and fantasy. It can have elements of both.
No.
I think it can have elements of both. And I think Star Wars definitely is sci-fi and fantasy. I would honestly say that it's more fantasy than it is sci-fi, in my opinion. But I would say that it is both. I think it can be both.
Oh.
But yeah. So I think to sort of express in simple terms. Also, this is a pretty notable checkpoint.
We have the same taste, you and I. It's not ambition. It's ambition's opposite. An obdurate mission to taste defeat.
Interesting way to put it.
You'll feel bad if you win, so I put this snake in for you.
Yeah, this snake is rather notable. We're not going to ride the snake on this particular instance, because I would like to win this game, ideally. Maybe not tonight, but at some point. Yeah, I would describe sci-fi where transportation is described and fantasy is where the food is described. That's a fun way to put it. I think that sort of, that definitely ties into sort of the common motifs used in sci-fi and fantasy. That being spaceships and feasts. But yeah. So I guess, like I was saying, fiction is, I think, any story that didn't happen. And basically, any story that isn't factual in nature is fiction. And where we get into, so if I were to tell a story of, just a person from Earth or, Earth today or Earth in the past or Earth in the future, doing, a thing that could conceivably happen, but that didn't necessarily happen. Either because, this specific thing didn't happen or just because this specific person doesn't exist. Then I think that is fiction. Where we get into the divisions into fantasy and sci-fi is, I think, more so a matter of sort of the themes in it. What is the sort of elements. There are certain common elements of fantasy and sci-fi writing that I think are necessary, in my opinion, to say that something is not simply fiction, but is fantasy, or is sci-fi. And so again, I think that a certain emphasis on technology and science is necessary for science fiction, even if the end result is something that couldn't happen based on our understanding of the real world that we live in. Yeah, even if it is, the end result is something that is not realistic or possible, I think that it can still be science fiction. So, for instance, I think that Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, is a science fiction story because it is based on, the idea is someone made a scientific discovery that allowed them to animate a person, basically, something that is basically a person, to create life through, scientific study and such, versus a fiction or a fantasy story wherein someone, and again, it's hard to draw a line sometimes. And I'll definitely give you that. But yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of struggling to think of how to draw the line myself here, now that I think about it. But yeah. I don't know, I think from sort of where I would draw the line between sci-fi and fantasy is that sci-fi typically tries to present the unreal aspects of itself, in terms that, in a way that makes sense and seems plausible. Like, if this were true, then we would be able to do that. And if this is true, we are able to do this and that, or whatnot. Whereas fantasy doesn't necessarily rely on sort of explanations that are... It doesn't try to rely on... I don't know. Again, I don't want to boil it down to just magic versus technology. Because I think you can have a science fiction story or a science fiction setting where there is magic. And you can have a fantasy story with technology in it. You can probably even have a fantasy story without magic in it. But I think, where I draw the line in my mind is that, a science fiction story is one that tries to explain to a certain extent. Yeah, there are deaf magic stories which explain their magic. That is true. I'm not really making the point as well as I would like to. Because, when I say explain, I don't mean to try and anything that goes into the details of how the thing works is an example of sci-fi versus an example of fantasy. Because, I don't think they go into much detail how, say, and maybe it's just because I haven't watched enough. I haven't watched the right episodes. But like in Star Trek, I don't think they explain a whole lot how, say, going their faster than light travel works. Because again, they kind of can't. Because it's not a thing that really exists. So I think, honestly, if they tried to explain it too much, it would end up being more fantastical because they'd be, adding more stuff to the world that doesn't exist in our world. So, yeah, so I guess I was giving too much weight to the terms like explanation. Again, I think it's more a matter of trying to present this as, I don't know. The more fantasy tends to treat, I think, because again, science fiction and fantasy, where they diverge from just fiction, historical fiction or contemporary fiction or whatever else, the way they diverge from just fiction is that there is a central element of them that is unreal, something that doesn't exist. And so I think in science fiction, I think that there is... The difference is that the unreal element is deliberately presented as something that is understandable, and if not necessarily understood, something that is comprehensible and explainable and, in a sense, sort of real. Not sort of, in a sense, sort of more real, even if it's not something that actually exists. Whereas in fantasy, a sort of difference is fantasy is where there are additional rules to the worlds we have now. Sci-fi is where we extrapolated the rules of our world. Close, but I think, I don't know. I guess, if that's what you're saying, then yeah, that's you can define it however you want. Yeah, I think the way I'm trying to describe it is though that fantasy tries to set forth an unreal thing in a way that makes sense and is consistent and seems believable. And fantasy tends to typically present the unreal aspect of the world as something that is incomprehensible, something that is deliberately mysterious and arcane, something that is perhaps entirely outside of the realm of comprehension. And, again, there can be overlap. You can have scientific elements or science fiction elements and fantastical elements in a story. And I think, that's almost inherently any given story will have a little bit of both. Or at least any science fiction will have a little bit of fantasy in it. Any fantasy will have a little bit of science fiction in it. Going based on the sort of definition that I put forth. Because any world in which there are wizards in the sense that they are in D&D, where this is a person who studies the world to understand how to make magic come out of it, basically, is inherently more science fiction than a world in which, all magic is just, you just want a thing and it happens. Even if it's, there are only specific things that can happen that require specific, stuff to make them work. But yeah, I definitely think that there are settings with magic that I would say are more, or settings and stories with magic that I would say are more sci-fi than that are pretty sci-fi. And there are settings and stories with no magic that have a great reliance on technology for certain aspects that are pretty fantasy. If you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, I think I don't know, I may have expressed the idea earlier of the main division between the two being the division of magic versus technology. But I think as I've sort of talked about this, I've sort of changed my mind a little bit. Yeah, I think to a certain extent, it is sort of in the where I would draw the line of what is science fiction, I think sort of lies in the name, science. Like, again, not necessarily something that adheres to real-world science as we understand it. That's a really good catch. Yeah, not necessarily something that corresponds to real-world science as we understand it, but like something that, a world where the unreal element is something that is, they put a certain amount of effort into explaining, into making understandable, into making something that you can study in beyond to a deeper degree than if you do these specific things, you will get this result in sort of a ritualistic, fantastical way. Yeah, so I think, like, for instance, you could have a setting that is a story that is pretty heavily fantasy, where there is no actual magic, but like a setting sort of like maybe like a post-apocalyptic setting where the people, the inhabitants of a world have forgotten how the technology works, really. And so all they know is if they, maybe it was activated by voice commands. So if they, do these specific chants, they can cause the great works of the ancients to reawaken themselves and reshape the world, you know. And it can just be, this is, just machines that respond to voice commands, and these incantations that we've developed are just, us managing to produce a set of utterances that are similar enough to the original voice commands that they are recognized. And, that is a very fantasy type of story. Whereas you could have a setting that explicitly has magic that, like, breaks the laws of physics as we understand it, but where that magic is sort of well-defined enough and is considered, well-defined enough and is understood well enough by the people in the world, not necessarily the people out of the world. Because again, like, I don't know how, and again, this might just be from me not watching enough Star Trek, but I don't know how the hyperdrives and stuff are supposed to work in the world. But the people in the world know how they work, so that's good enough. That is sort of makes them more science fiction than fantasy in my mind. But yeah, I do love these little discussions. I do love discussing things like this. Maybe I should do some more, or I say more, maybe I should do some at all streams about literature so that I have a reason to look into and to discuss literary topics more, because I really do like them. Yeah, it's been a long time since I finished a novel, but I do like to read. And moreover, I like to think about stories, I guess, even more so than I like to read them or to experience them in general. Yeah, we are getting pretty close to time here, so maybe I should wrap things up for the day, and we will discover the mysteries of this bucket some other time. But, I don't know, I want to give it at least one more try. But yes, thank you for your input, Madrosity, by the way. Yeah, I feel like my debate skills are not as polished as they could be. So I feel like a lot of the time when I sort of have discussions with people, I end up, at least in my mind, I often feel a little bit like I'm, rather than, having sort of a back and forth, I often feel like I'm just sort of stating my opinion and refuting everyone else's sometimes. But I want you to know I do appreciate your input, and, I don't know, I don't think I was particularly pushy this time around, but I definitely have been in some debates and opinions are so hard. Yeah. It's hard to it's hard to sort of expound on opinions with other people without trying to or at least I find it hard to expound upon opinions with other people without sort of just sort of presenting my opinions very forcefully. Not necessarily aggressively or rudely, I guess, but it's a little bit hard for me to sort of consciously give other people the opportunity to express their views and not just follow up with, well, here's what I think. Here's what I think. Because in my mind, I don't want to sort of try and override anyone else's opinion. I just want to, I want to hear what people say and respond with what I think also. Yeah. I don't know. I think we'll call it. 'Cause, yeah, it is almost exactly 9:30 at this point. Oop, oop, oop. What just happened? Ah, Orange Viper? Yeah, congrats on getting to the bucket. Thank you. Yes, Orange Viper PHJR, thank you for the follow. But yes. I heard 2 notifications there. Or at least I thought I did. Yes, welcome to the stream. Unfortunately, you have joined us basically just at the end here. But thank you for stopping by nonetheless. But yeah. So, I guess, yeah. Okay. So, first of all, let's decide on our raid target so that we can start getting ready for that. Yeah, as always, if anyone has any raid suggestions, I would be delighted to hear them. Please feel free to suggest anyone you feel like, anyone here. But yeah. And so in the meantime, we'll take a sip real quick, and then we'll go over the schedule. That's it. So yes. So, today has been getting over it. Had a lot of fun here today, talking about literature, talking about food, all sorts of things. But yes. Yeah, today has been getting over it. Tomorrow, we expect more Tales of Arise. Then on Thursday, we should be seeing some more Valhalla. Should be continuing the Valhalla collab with Sheppy Sheps. Yes, and so that should be basically the rest of the week. Again, I don't anticipate streaming on Friday because I'm going to be very busy at work that day, and I'm probably going to be very tired when I get back from work that day. So I don't think I'll be in the mood to stream, but we'll see. But yeah, I will look into the possibility of doing a stream on Saturday, because we've been a little bit short of streams recently. I'll look into the possibility of doing a stream on Saturday, but I won't commit to anything at this point beyond looking into it, basically. So yeah, once again, if anyone would have any raid suggestions, I would like to hear them. And if not, I can always find a target for myself. Give you all a few more moments to decide while I take another sip. Head empty? Fair enough, fair enough. Alright. You know, I feel like it's been a good while since we've visited this individual, so I think tonight we're going to go and see Chibi 126. Flash raid. Yes. 126. For some reason I want to say 127. I think I might be thinking of Germa 987. But yes, anyway. So, Chibi, she's playing some Bioshock, it looks like. Bioshock Remastered, specifically. Yeah, she is a Sea Cat VTuber. Visit her a good few times. Yeah, visit her a good few times. But we haven't for a while, I don't think. But yeah, so the customary raid message is, as always, we have arrived. There we are. So, let's see. Anything else to go over before we... Oh, right. So, Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to be streaming Tales of Arise and then Valhalla, respectively. Then for, the times, because I don't think I mentioned the times this time. 7:30 p.m. for every stream except for the Thursday stream, which typically begins at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. So, that should be everything that I need to go over. And if not, oh well. It's all that I can think of at the moment. So, thank you all for being here tonight. I hope that you have had a fine night. I hope that you will continue to have a fine night every night. And I hope that you will be well until the next time I see you. Thank you all very much, and farewell. Let us get this raid underway.